We're going to go on to this story here about Piers Morgan and Miko Peled. They had a little bit of a debate, and Piers actually put this interview off for quite a while, and Miko had announced it, and he said he postponed it, etc. And I think he just continued postponing it. But they finally did have this discussion. I think this conversation should have been a longer discussion. I felt like, Piers, you shouldn't have shortchanged Miko Peled like this, because I've seen you had longer discussions with people, but you got to know who Miko Peled is. Miko Peled, remember, he wrote the book, The General's Son. His dad was a general in the IDF. He is a strong advocate for the Palestinian people and the BDS movement. So he is Jewish. He is very well aware what has happened to the Palestinian people. And that makes me wonder if that's why Piers did not extend this interview, the time of this interview. I think it should have been longer. But they have this discussion about the Houthis. And I want to show you something Piers does during this discussion. He think he's slick, but we're going to call it out. Let's go ahead and get into it.
The US and UK have unleashed a series of joint fresh airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. The strikes targeted an underground storage site, missiles and other military capabilities. In a joint statement, they said their aim remains to de-escalate tensions and restore stability in the Red Sea. Rishi Sunak went one step further, calling it self-defense.
We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defense.
So is it self-defense? And are the strikes doing anything but de-escalating the situation in the Middle East or escalating them? Joining me now to discuss this is the son of the IDF general, Miko Peled, who is now a Palestinian activist, Miko Peled, and Yemeni journalist, Luai Ahmed. Well, welcome to both of you. Let me start with...
You guys see what he did, right? So you know he has opposing sides. So he'll have the pro-Palestine side, and he'll have the the anti-Palestine side or whatever. So let me tell you what Piers did. Obviously, they're talking about the Houthis. The Houthis are from Yemen. So Piers think he's slick. So what he does is, let me bring on a Yemeni journalist who has an opposing view to the Houthis. You know, it's like those times like when Fox News is like, let me bring on that one black conservative to prove that this is not a racial issue. He think he's slick, but I see you, Piers. I see you.
With you, Miko, to me, it seems pretty straightforward. You've got a bunch of Houthis who are firing rockets to try and stop, I think it's nearly 15% of the world's trade, maybe more, coming through the Red Sea. And they have to be stopped, don't they?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Piers. I would frame it slightly differently. I think what we're seeing is Yemeni forces acting responsibly in response to a genocide taking place in Palestine. And we've seen over the last month or so, or excuse me, 3 months or so, we've seen a heightening of the genocide with the tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians being massacred.
What does that have to do with the Houthis in Yemen? With all...
You see how he just jumps across and interrupts Miko?
And, well, the international community has to act. If the international community does not act to stop Israel, nothing will. And countries around the world needs to act. And I think what the Yemeni forces are doing are one of the only responsible actions that we've seen. The other one, of course, has been the South Africans with a petition to the ICJ. The international community cannot continue to ignore what is happening in Palestine, a 75-year-old genocide and apartheid regime. And when one country decides to step up and do the responsible thing and respond, they're being bombed by the Americans and the British.
What is responsible about firing rockets at cargo ships coming through the Red Sea? What is responsible about that?
First of all, it's their waters, right? It's their waters. Second of all, to Miko's point, the international community has to show up for the Palestinian people. And that's what the Houthis are doing. Now, you can have your criticisms of the Houthis, but the thing is, who is coming to the defense of the Palestinian people? Are they supposed to allow weapons to just go across their waters to continue to kill these people? You know, so to me, like, that's the thing. And I don't get this at all. I don't get this. Because my thing is, you got one group trying to stop a genocide, and then you got people like Piers who are like, let's let it continue. Let's let the Palestinian people continue to be slaughtered. And the Houthis are saying, like, no, stop it. And they know because their country, people in their country were destroyed by weapons that came from the United States. They know what it's like.
Well, what is responsible is, first of all, the blockade of the Bab el-Mandab is an act of resistance. It's an act in response to the lack of action, the severe criminal lack of action by the rest of the world.
I think that's what Iran. I think that's
of the genocide taking place.
I would say I want to come to my other guest.
That is the issue.
All right, let me come to Luai.
That's what Piers doesn't want to talk about. Piers doesn't want to talk about the genocide. Piers just wants to focus on the fact that the Houthis are stopping those ships from delivering those weapons. He makes it seem like this group just rose up one day and is like, I'm not going to allow any of those ships to deliver any of the supplies, with no backstory to go with it. So when Miko starts off by discussing the genocide and he jumps in and he says, well, what does that have to do with the Houthis? That has everything to do with what they are doing. That has everything to do with it. It's disingenuous to sit here and pretend like it does not.
You can't take it out of context, Piers.
Well, actually, you shouldn't bring it into
ignore the Palestinian issue.
I think it's being deliberately conflated. It's being deliberately conflated as a context because Iran wants people to think that way. Let me bring in Luai Ahmed. Let me bring in Luai Ahmed, please, the other guest. Luai, your view of what you just heard.
Yeah, I think it's actually quite insulting to say that what the Houthis are doing are acting responsibly. The Houthis.
See, I told you he did this on purpose. He is a Yemeni journalist. So what he did was he's like, let me find a Yemeni journalist that is against what the Houthis are doing and bring this person on. You know, it's like I said, it's like when Fox News was like, let me find that one black conservative that I can bring on to the show that'll actually be against, you know, what's happening with the George Floyd protests. That's what he did.
Took over Yemen, northern Yemen by force. They slaughtered people, they killed people. It is a terrorist group that acts with violence and does not care about the Yemenis. Ever since the Houthis took over northern Yemen, more than 21 million Yemenis are in need of humanitarian aid.
Why is that though? Because we're going to talk about this as well. Why did the Houthis even begin? Why are people in Yemen in need of humanitarian aid? Who slaughtered the people? Who bombed the country? That was Saudi Arabia. Where did they get the weapons from? The United States government. But he wants you to just sit here and believe that the humanitarian crisis is all because of the Houthis.
10 million Yemeni children are starving. So if the Houthis were to act responsibly, they would take care of their own people. They would take care of their own starving population. Yemen is the biggest humanitarian crisis in the Middle East.
Because of Saudi Arabia. Because they were bombed. And that's the same thing that can happen to Gaza. That's why they're trying to put a stop to the weapons coming in.
And it's been perpetrated also by a war with Saudi Arabia that happened because they took over the northern part of Yemen. So the Houthis should mind their own business and care about their own people who live in famine. The Yemenis do not need another war. And one of the reasons that many people in the West are supporting Houthis and supporting their actions is because they're just looking for any hero to bomb Israel. I mean, even if Hitler was alive today and he started bombing Israel, they would.
Let me pause. I just want to ask you guys a question. Did I miss something? Are the Houthis bombing Israel? You see, there's a difference between a ship and land. So it's one thing that they're trying to stop these ships from coming in with the weapons. It's another thing if they're actually bombing Israel. I don't know.
All call him a hero because they blindly hate Israel and they cannot see the nuances. And most of them don't even know the slightest bit of the Houthis, because the Houthis are not a country like he says. They're a militia. They're a sect that took over the northern part of Yemen. They're not the legitimate power in Yemen, but they took over the country by force. So they don't really have any legitimacy as an internationally recognized government.
Now, let me call him out here, right? Didn't Zionists take over Israel? Or Palestine, excuse me, I should say. Didn't Zionists take over Palestine? Displace the Palestinian people? Create the state of Israel? I can't make this up, man. I can't make this one up.
And they're also backed by Iran, which is trying to impose its power on the rest of the Middle East. And I mean, I need not tell you about what Iran has been doing in the Middle East for the past.
Isn't Israel trying to impose its power on the rest of the Middle East? So let me see. You see the problem, guys? So it seems to be okay when Israel does these things. It's just not okay when other countries do these things.
20, 30 years. They've also assassinated all of their secular leaders.
Yeah.
Next month, they're assassinating Fatima al-Awri, who is a human rights advocate who has been criticizing them. So it's kind of insulting to say that they're acting responsibly just because they're attacking Israel.
To be honest, I've heard.
We're going to talk about leaders. Do you say anything when the U.S. government assassinates other leaders in these countries? When they take out leaders? Causing groups like the reason why some of those groups form is because the U.S. government oftentimes has come into these countries, they've removed these leaders or they've assassinated these leaders, and other groups form. We've talked about this before with the show about Saddam Hussein. When the U.S. government took out Saddam Hussein, that gave way for ISIS. That's why they were able to form. When Saddam Hussein was still in power, he was able to keep those kind of groups in check. I can't.
Both sides now. I just think the idea it's responsible is for the birds. It's utterly irresponsible. It's warmongering. It's deliberately inflammatory. It's at Iran's behest. And they're getting the bloody nose they deserve from the US and UK. We're trying to preserve nearly 15% of the world's trade from going down in the Red Sea. I can't think of anything more responsible than the response that's coming their way. Anyway, thank you.
Now he's going to try to pretend like it's just about trade. You know, weapons are on those ships, Piers. You know, those ships aren't just carrying no damn supplies. You know, there are weapons on those ships. He is more upset. Listen to this, guys. Piers Morgan is more upset at the Houthis attacking a ship with supplies for trade and weapons than he is at Israel committing genocide against the Palestinian people. He has more anger over property, over items, than he does at the death of the Palestinian people. It's a very revealing moment. So I want you to see a little bit of this for yourself so you can actually see who are the Houthis. Al Jazeera did a great piece on this a while back. Listen to this.
So who are the Houthis? They began in the 90s as a moderate theological movement of the Zaydis, that's a Shia minority group. Fighting corruption was one of their main aims. The 2003 US invasion of Iraq was a turning point. Analysts believe the war transformed the Houthis into a resistance group.
Pause. That part right there. The 2003 invasion of Iraq. Some believe that that is what transformed the Houthis group into a resistance group. Now, he brought on that Yemeni journalist. He didn't tell you about this, though. He didn't talk about the U.S. invasion of Iraq and that and the fact that that had on the Houthis. He didn't tell you about that, but that's okay. That's why you got me here.
Deep anti-American sentiments. In 2015, Houthi fighters seized Yemen's capital, Sana'a. That triggered more than 9 years of war between the Saudi-led coalition, which backs the internationally recognized government, and the Houthis, supported by Iran. On October the 31st, the Houthis entered the war in Gaza, firing drones and missiles at Israel. And earlier this month, the Houthis said they would target all ships heading towards Israel. We're joined now by Hussein al-Bukaiti, political analyst aligned with the Houthi movement, and he's joining us live from Sana'a. Very good to have you with us, Mr. Bukaiti. What's your response to this international task force? Are the Houthis worried about attacks by the US and its allies?
No, they are not worried at all, because when they have taken the decision to target Israeli ship or Israeli linked ship or any ship from any country going to any port of Israel, they will aware that the United States or Israel might take an action, and they did their action because, as they say, it is in solidarity and it is actually an obligation to do so. That's why as well, if you see the alliance that the United States now has formed, Yemen has been under attack and blockade for almost 9 years, and many countries in this alliance, they were fully supporting the Saudi backed forces, and at the end what happened, the Yemeni army has become stronger. They had actually defeated Saudi Arabia to reach its goal. That's why I'm sure, as Mohammed Abdul Salam today had a statement a few hours ago, he said we will continue our operation against any.
Okay, I want to chime in here when he talked about solidarity. Mr. Positivity, perfect timing. As a Muslim, we are required by Allah to stand with Muslims anywhere who are being oppressed. This could be by protesting in the US or doing as the Houthis do. Houthis are simply defending our bros and sis. So you see that?
As they declared before, unless the food and medicine will be allowed into Gaza. And they are well aware that the United States might attack Yemen, but they have said any country that will be involved in attacking Yemen, their ships and oil tanker, and as well this country itself, it will be harmed and it will be attacked. I'm thinking that United States might be forcing the Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates actually to break the truce that has been
Well, are you worried that they might do that? The Saudi
and,
Arabia and the United
countries.
Arab Emirates are not part of this task force. Are you worried that they will join the task force? What does that mean for peace between Saudis and the Houthis?
I mean, they were in direct war against Yemen and they couldn't do anything. And when they actually signed this agreement, they were forced because of the attack against Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. We remember that this truce was in Yemen was actually announced after the major attack against Aramco facility in Jeddah. That's why Saudi Arabia and United States at this point, I don't think they want Yemen to target the oil infrastructure, because as you mentioned in your report that now the oil prices and gas prices has increased, and I believe this is actually why Yemeni have done this latest action, because they know that you can only hurt the West in their pocket, and especially as well Israel by targeting those ships.
Many of the ships.
Let's pause there. Sorry, she talks over him a bit, but I wanted to add this part when he brought up the oil and the gas. You see, the real frustration in reference to the Houthis is not just so much about the fact that they're preventing those weapons or trying to prevent those weapons from getting to Israel. It's also the fact that they are disrupting capital. So you heard what he just said. The gas prices have gone up. I keep telling you guys, at the end of the day, it always comes back to money. That's why they're upset. About 2.5 years ago, those of us at RBN, we had a general strike summit. Some people, we didn't even have 10,000 subscribers at that time. Some people lost their shit because we hosted a 3-day general strike summit, multiple panels where people came on to talk about different issues and basically to advocate for the reason why we need a general strike to get real change in this country. Even when it comes to these damn wars, we have to disrupt capital. That's how people listen. Look at what's happening to McDonald's in France. The farmers are like, have actually taken, grass and stuff from their farm and dumped it inside the McDonald's. People boycotting the McDonald's because they're actively funding the genocide in Gaza, right? You have to disrupt capital. That's when people hear you. The protests are great. Don't get me wrong. I think we still need to keep up the protests. But at some point or another, and I still stand by this, we need to have a general strike in this damn country. We need to have a general strike. And the way that you do it is you disrupt the flow of goods. You do that by the truckers going on strike, the port workers on the West Coast going on strike, along with the truckers, the railroad workers going on strike. You see, Joe Biden knew that that would disrupt capital. That is why he prevented that from happening. That's when they listen to you, peeps. That's when your voice is heard. Disrupt the capital, and that's how you get your damn ceasefire. You can do that for any issue. Any issue. You guys tired of this inflation? You tired of the high prices? You tired of the economic issues? You tired, you pissed and mad that they won't give everybody health care in this country? General strike. Make your demands. You disrupt capital, and then they listen to you.